Margaret the Cahirley and my question specifically relates to the Tribunal of Inquiry to examine the effectiveness of the complaints process of the Defence Forces. When will it actually sit to hear, bearing in mind that it'll be 3 years in September since the Katie Hannon show when the Women of Honour showed courage. It's over 2 years since the independent review, and we're now into our 4th month since you announced it. Can you give us the details, please?
Yeah, the government recently approved the terms of reference for the Tribunal of Inquiry pursuant to the provisions of the Tribunal of Inquiries Act 1921. The Tribunal will examine the effectiveness of the complaints processes in the Defence Forces concerning workplace issues relating to discrimination, bullying, harassment, sexual misconduct and the use of hazardous chemicals within Aire Corps headquarters at Casement Airdrome, Baldonnel. The government also approved the appointment of Ms Justice Anne Power to chair the Tribunal. The motions to establish the Tribunal of Inquiry were subsequently approved by both Dáil Éireann and Seanad Éireann. The Tribunal chair is currently finalising arrangements to allow the inquiry to commence its work at the earliest possible date. This includes the appointment of legal and administrative staff to support the work of the Tribunal. A premises in Smithfield in Dublin has been provided by the Office of Public Works for the purposes of the inquiry, and arrangements are ongoing to ensure that it is ready for its first public sitting day. I will be signing a statutory instrument very shortly, to give effect to the formal establishment of the Tribunal, and following this I anticipate that the Tribunal will publish an opening statement containing general guidance for all persons who wish to engage with the Tribunal on matters that are relevant to its terms of reference. This would include information about how people can make submissions to the Tribunal. It will be a matter for the Tribunal to determine how it conducts its subsequent investigations. Decisions on the granting of legal representation will, as is normal in these cases, be a matter for the Tribunal.
I understand, and I welcome the fact that we're beginning to get a little bit of clarity. The premises has been procured. That's good. The statutory instrument has not been signed yet, which is not so good. What is the delay in that? When will that be signed? That's still vague around that. And then in relation to and I'm conscious all of the time of the background and the delay to this and the whole history, which I won't go into in this time. And for the inquiry that was set up said, notwithstanding the role of the Defence Forces, neither men nor women in the Defence Forces are working in a safe environment. Just to put it mildly, I'm taking just the most the easiest statement from it. Many more harsher things were said in that. So it's essential that we get clarity around that. There will be a public statement from the person that's been appointed. It's still unclear about legal help and legal advice. You're saying it's a matter for the Tribunal. But those that come forward, will they come forward in an oral basis? Will they make written submissions and clarity on the legal assistance and costs? Thanks.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we have indicated that in terms of Smithfield being the location, and there are, we had issues to discuss around legal representation and so on and costs, and that's all sorted. And I expect the commencement notice will be within, certainly I would anticipate within the next fortnight. And my officials will be bringing the commencement notice for me to sign. In terms of normally, and I don't see any change here, but it is, once we appoint a chairperson, the chairperson will organise the conduct of the Tribunal and so forth, but parties will have entitlements in terms of legal representation and so forth. But it is a matter for the chair to kind of organise how the Tribunal is conducted, the nature of submissions that will be made, written and oral. But I don't really want to, if you like, go into that, go into the work of the chair of the Tribunal, because once the Dáil and the government, once the Dáil approves the terms of reference, once the government appoints a chair, it is within the context of the legislation, and it's a public inquiry under the 1921 Tribunal of Inquiry, which was sought by Women of Honour and others because they wanted full transparency. So then the chair will operate within that act. We're determined, I think very serious issues, as you have said, were raised in the context of the independent review group, which was first established after the revelations from Women of Honour on RTE, and that took a year, and it made its conclusions, which I think were important in themselves, and then that led to the establishment of the the
Honestly, you've gone back a little bit. What happened here was simply unacceptable. The length of time, the whole lot, and it took a documentary to spur you into action. But that's history now. At this point, in terms of has the administrative staff been appointed? Is there a full team now in place? When will the statutory instrument be signed? Will it be signed today, tomorrow? Is the administrative staff in place? And in relation to the actual procedures, that's very important for people, because this is an inquiry, a tribunal, into the effectiveness of the complaints process. Now, I mean, that in itself is absurd, but that's where we're at, because clearly the complaints process was totally inadequate, ineffective, and in itself became an abusive process. But that's my opinion on it, and it's certainly the opinion of a lot of other people. So at this point, to make sure that there's trust, we need clarity on how people are going to make their submissions, and we need full clarity on legal advice to them. Will legal advice be available to them? Will that be made clear on the first day when the tribunal sits, and when will it sit? With the first opening day?
Well, ordinarily what happens in this, first of all, I did say in my previous reply that I expect to be signing that commencement order within a fortnight, if not sooner. I mean, there's a lot of preparatory work has to be done by a tribunal before hearings are announced. That's normal, where people make submissions and so forth. And I don't anticipate any difference in terms of legal representation that various parties and people have or had in previous tribunals of inquiry. So a lot of progress has been made, yes, in terms of staffing and in terms of getting this up and running. But there's a lot of preparatory work is required to get a tribunal of this nature established, and it will require a lot of resources in terms of both department and defence forces separately, in terms of cooperating fully and with the tribunal. And then obviously others who will also be making submissions will require support as well.